Good evening from the UK and welcome to Monday Night Open Minds. Yes, I'm having to bring the show 3 times a week instead of 1 for the foreseeable future. So we have a very special guest tonight, but before I continue, I just wanted to say I've put, it's called Ko-fi. It's a donation to buy me a cup of coffee. As you know, all the things I do, all the podcasts, all the Zoom rooms, I do it free. I don't charge anyone because not everyone has money. So they get all the access free totally. However, nearly a year down the line, I'm saying if you want to donate a cup of coffee or a bit more, or 2 coffees, it's on my Facebook page and it's also on the Open Minds page as well on Facebook and Inception Podcast. So now I've sold myself out there. You know you want to buy me a coffee, don't you? Come on, guys. I would like to introduce a very special guest. I saw him synchronistically on another podcast. It was Teresa's and Laura's, actually. Fantastic duo that are coming on Open Mind soon. And I said, I've got to have him. And he very kindly agreed. Now, I'm going to read some of his bio. It's extensive and there's more likely words in there I've never heard in my life. But here we go. So tonight we have Scotty Roberts, and he is a creative art director, illustrator, designer, rogue historian, oh hell that says, Rapscallion, theologian, adventurer, paranormalist, photographer, author and writer. He says, I am a designer, illustrator and writer of fiction and non-fiction, occupationally hovering in the advertising ghettos of Minneapolis. It's American city, that's why.
Yes.
And it goes on. I mean, basically, I could stay here for the whole show and read the achievements that Scotty has done. I'm not going to, because Scotty is going to share them with you. So welcome, Scotty, to Open Minds.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, are you ready? First of all, I got to say, everybody, when Scotty come on to Zoom, I was slightly distracted and this beautiful, energetic, high vibrational voice went, hello. It scared me. Oh my God. But yeah, it's going uphill since we've met today, the first time. Now, Scotty, it's a simple question, okay?
All right.
Where did your spiritual journey begin for you?
Oh, boy. I would say officially when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
And this isn't talking religion, it's talking about the religions that and the spirituality. Mm-hmm. I became a born-again Christian into the Baptist Conservative Fundamentalist Church here in the Minneapolis, Minnesota area.
Yeah.
And I was in that religion and that training, that denomination for several years. Mm-hmm. I went from there into Bible college. Mm-hmm. And then I went from Bible college into seminary, and I was going to be a pastor or a missionary. I ended up working with youth for quite a while. Mm-hmm. And became a little disillusioned with the non-answering of what I felt were very important questions.
Yeah.
And many of them didn't have to do so much with salvific theology, you know, Jesus and God and all of that. They had to do with all the trappings. And I said, all the other things. And I said, if there are questions and problems with these things theologically, I said, how can we trust the other things?
Yeah.
And so I was, the very first question I'll tell you was on the Nephilim. I was in seminary.
Yeah.
Not that I didn't have questions prior to that, but I was looking at that passage in depth for really the first time in looking at the Noah and the Ark story in Genesis. It's the preamble to the story is the story of the Nephilim.
Yeah.
And it says, and the sons of God, the B'nai Ha-Elohim, came down from the heavens and intermingled with the daughters of men and had children by them. And then it goes into the Nephilim story.
Yeah.
And so I said, what are these guys? Who are these guys? I've never heard this before. And well, I was told by one of the seminary professors, don't let that bother you at all. That's just there's a lot of hoo-ha made up about that. It's basically, it was the sons of the aristocrats who built the school of the prophets, and they went down into the valley slumming with the common women.
Wow,
and the children.
Can I just say, Scotty, that was gentle. I was told, first of all, don't question, because you can burn in hellfire. But
right.
A few said they're demons, they're the bad ones, they're the Lucifers. And, really put like the fear of God as a youngster in me. So you got it quite, don't question it. I was really threatened. Don't even bother coming back and asking or inquiring. So, yeah.
Well, I was given kind of a wink, wink, nudge, nudge. These are things we don't talk about so much. It doesn't have anything to do with your salvation or anything like that. So, you can interpret that, but we don't teach about that here. And that really led to, and that was one of the first books I wrote, was a book on that topic, but it was many years later. Because the question I asked was this. I said, you teach us that words mean something. And when we look at old scripture, we're supposed to look at this and understand. Why do you think we had to take Koine Greek and Hebrew and Aramaic in seminary? It was so we could interpret these passages, or at least translate these passages properly. And I said, now you teach us that words mean things, yet in this passage, it says the Bene Ha Elohim, the sons of God, came down and mingled with the daughters of Adam, mankind. I said, there is a stark contrast there in the linguistics. I said, if this was the sons of the schools of the prophet, the aristocrats, why doesn't it say that? Why does it give us this contrasting types of beings? And that's where I was told, don't be a troublemaker. We're not going to talk about that. Now, I was on a seminary level instead of a grade school level. So, maybe they talked with, if I had been grade school and asked that question in a setting like that, I might have gotten a harsher answer.
Yeah, a bit like I got, because I was in
there you go.
I was asking. I questioned everything, but later on down the line, when I studied comparative religions and I spoke to the peers in that field, it was the same. It wasn't, you're going to burn in hellfire. No, we don't. So why don't you do a sermon on this? And I would quote something, no. It's just like, and it was a lot later on, but yes, I'm aware of chapter and verse you're talking about. Do go on. So
well, so I hung out in seminary for a couple of years. I was doing youth ministry, but alongside, I was in a small church that couldn't afford to hire me. So I did full-time youth pastor as well as a full-time working in advertising. I was an artist, graphic designer at the time. We're talking almost 40 years ago now. And so I, old school, by the way, you're an artist yourself, so you understand when I say I was trained old school.
I am an old school artist, trained that way. Well, I never I did go to an art college, but I sort of was an artist since I can remember. So it was a natural thing for me.
Yes.
I learned some techniques in art college, but apart from that, I'm old school. I'm definitely old school for art. Yeah.
Well, and everything I learned in graphics was all old school. It was not computerized.
No.
Back when I started, and I started in high school in 1977. I was a junior in high school.
Wow.
And I got to start working for a small theological publisher, doing illustrated book jackets, dust jackets for books and things like that. And running their litho camera and all of that stuff. And it wasn't until 1989 that I got my first computer. So working as a creative director.
I think it's around about the same time as me.
There you go.
I think round about, the same time as me. Yeah.
So I got my first Apple. I was given an option by the owner of the ad agency. He said, you need an assistant. We can hire an assistant. We'll give you $40,000 to do that, or you can get this computer system. And that I had showed them. And I said, oh, I'll definitely take and it was an Apple setup and all of that. So anyway, after seminary and working in advertising, working as a youth pastor, my questions still remained unanswered for a lot of things. I used to, and this borderlines getting into theology, so I'll keep it soft.
Yeah.
But I had big questions about the afterlife.
Yeah.
I had big questions about heaven and hell.
Yeah.
I had big questions about if the finite mind of man that God created is supposed to understand the infiniteness of eternity, and that having only, let's say you live a natural lifespan, 70 to 100 years old, in that 30-year range, before you kick off, you've got basically, in comparison to infinity, eternity, you've got roughly 70 to 100 years to make a decision of, with your finite mind, on an infinite topic, without any real firsthand contact with anything other than the words in a book. And so I questioned that. Now, I never threw out the baby with the bathwater. You could say I am still a Christian. I call myself a Christo pagan these days because I've blended some of those. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a Christian. However, I have no issue with Christ consciousness. How's that?
Yeah, it is.
I'm not the dogma, the religion, but I have no issue with Christ consciousness. I'm fully aware what that is, and it resonates with me. So, and
of course, we taught that when I was in seminary and all through school, and with the youth group, I talk to the kids about. I'm mostly high school kids I worked with. I talked to them about developing a Christ consciousness.
Yes.
So that's what we talked about even back then. And back then I was a bit of a rogue, or the one word you stumbled over in my bio, the Rapscallion theologian.
Yeah, I couldn't say that word. I mean, I know you pulled that out of a thesaurus just to throw the rest of us. And I went to university and I learned big words, but that word I couldn't.
Well, I think the first time I heard that had to be in a movie where some southern gentleman was saying, "Why, sir, you are nothing but a rapscallion, a scoundrel," and so.
Oh, it's a scoundrel. Does it mean scoundrel then?
It's not as bad. It's not as negative as scoundrel. It's more
it's a loving scoundrel.
Yes, a happy scoundrel.
Okay.
So that's why I say I am theologically, and so I just went through the years and I started developing a lot of this sense of there's got to be more than what I've been taught. Another thing that really, these are the kinds of things that turned me away from organized religion and into being more pursuing a spiritual aspect. My relationship with God is a personal thing. It can't be defined by a church or by a denomination. And there was another incident that sticks out in my head. This happened around 1990, 1991. I had a good friend of mine I went to high school with, and we used to do these high power duets for the church, singing music. And if you ever get a chance to look them up, Robert Hale and Dean Wilder were both, I think, opera singers that had done these high powered Christian music. And we based a lot of what we did off of that, even as teenagers. And so we did this high powered song for the church, and it was a church of about 500-600 people were there present. And of course, you don't clap in the Baptist church. You go, amen, or glory, or, or whatever it is. And so we sang this high powered duet, and it was around Christmas time, and the whole house came down with amens, amen, amen, glory, whatever it was. And the next day, we got called into the music minister's office. Can you come and have a meeting with me? Sure. And we got chewed out for using the arrangement of a guy named Steve Green, who was a Christian musician. pop cultural, pop music.
Yeah.
And we used his arrangement of this beautiful Christmas song, and we got raked over the coals by the music minister because we don't listen to his music in our church. He's in that liberal theologian camp.
Oh God.
And I remember I started to bristle, and my buddy's brother-in-law was the pastor, so he had to kind of toe the line.
Yeah.
He was trying to calm me down, and I said, "Now wait a minute." Now I wasn't angry or anything. I wasn't enraged. I was like, "Now wait a minute, Mike." I said to the music minister, "Are you trying to tell me, after all the smoke is clearing, that God was not pleased with our song because Steve Green arranged the music? That God was not pleased with it?" And he stammered, "Oh, that's not the point." I said, "That is the point, isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't that why we do what we do in ministry? Isn't that why we do what we do with music?" And so these are the things that, all the little things that stacked up, and somebody might say, "Oh, that's pretty petty reason to leave your faith." Well, no, it was a whole series of
I know, I hear you. I mean,
over 2 decades that made me question things.
I went through very similar. I wasn't in the ministry. No one would have me in any ministry, trust me. I was a curious child, and I questioned everything. And it was the build-up of all of it. And I'd be things like, okay, right, see the God in the Old Testament, he's not very nice. And he tells people to go and rape and pillage and kill and murder. But he's telling me I can't do that, and it's wrong. So there's a contradiction. That was first. I was picking up that what we were supposed to do as human beings back in the day, but what this raging, fierce, telling to go and pillage and rape and kill and destroy. And then I said, and in the New Testament, it wasn't as bad as the old one, slightly better, but still. And I said, the message in the scriptures that, God is love, God is this. And I said, I'm sorry, no, I can't, it doesn't compute. Because I always knew that there was something in me, not the God of the Abrahamic religions or anything, but I knew there was something in me that was love. I knew it. And if I could never rape, murder, or do anything with intent, that's a natural innate. So I had big ones like that. And it was the bigger ones, not the little one. It was the bigger ones when I questioned, and I used discernment. I said that is illogical. There's 2 different gods. We've got 2 different gods going on here. That's so I went through that. And when I studied other religions as well, like Islam, and I heard this God talk with this love, but then I studied the Sharia, and I'm like, oh my God, this God hates women. Oh my God, it hates it. So that's mine were like large, big contradictions that were conflicting or nonsensical. Literally, I couldn't make sense. Like, if I said to you, what is the sex of a tuna sandwich? That's illogical, isn't it? So that's where I was coming from. So mine were large ones. At the end, I never went in. I couldn't,
Right. Well, I saw it this way. I saw it was the God of the Old Testament that was to be feared.
Yes.
And it was, lo, and thou shalt go in and smite every man and every woman and every child and every sheep and every goat and every cow, and put the city to the torch.
Yes.
And for they do not follow my ways, and so on. But then in the New Testament, it was, this is the same God that's the Abba Father.
Yes.
The Abba, the Aramaic for the daddy God. And you can crawl into his lap, and he takes all your troubles.
Yes.
Jesus stands with his arms open wide to receive you. And
it's a contradiction. I mean,
it is.
We'll pump the brakes there just for a second. We're not
sure.
I am not here to offend anybody.
Oh, yeah.
We are talking about our own personal journey. And there's good points to religion, and for those that need to go through that, that's fine. Yes. I went through it and I come out, it just didn't serve. It's my truth, it isn't. So I have your choice is your choice. I am not here, nor is my guest, to offend anyone, but we're trying to show how we came to where we are
Yeah.
today through the process of going. So we'll jump ahead now because we've really gone quite deep on that to show.
All right.
You went into seminary. You could have been.
Went into seminary.
Could have been a vicar, but you weren't, because you was a loving scoundrel. I got that.
I was. So, you know, and then just life went on after that. I worked with youth. Let's see, I was in seminary in 1980 and 81. And then by the time I was hitting the mid 90s, I was working with youth ministry a bit on the side. I was working with men's ministries in the evangelical free church that I was in, which was a very good church, by the way. My old pastor there was John Larson, and I always affectionately referred to him as Parson Larson. And we still keep in touch every now and then and talk. But I started to get into the men's ministries, which was small groups, and I dealt with guys that were in troubled marriages and trying to work their way through problems like that. And we'd meet at my house once a week. And then, of course, I got divorced in the middle of that. And my pastor said, I got to pull you from that. He says, it's not a personal thing. It's not meant to be hurtful. He says, but right now, he says, I need you before you can go on with this. He said, and this was very loving and it was very good advice. He said, I need you to make sure you know where you're at before you carry on with this ministry. And he says, I'm here for you anytime. And he says, please don't leave the church or anything. And it wasn't like you're being yanked from ministry. It was, I think this is the best thing you can do right now is focus on who you are. And I remember asking him at one point when I was writing some of my books, I said, it seems to me that the Old Testament is rife with references to, how would I say this? Monotheism, the worship of one God and one God alone, I said, is really not taught in the Old Testament the way we think it is.
Yeah.
I said, there was one of my first books was on the Nephilim, the Elohim.
Yeah.
And
that's where I want to take the conversation.
There you go.
I have a connection with similar studies, similar things with the Nephilim and the Elohim. Absolutely. So as we go along, we'll go to that point, and that's where I would love for you to share the knowledge and wisdom that you've acquired, and also to preempt that, you keep talking about your books. What are your books called? Do you have them there? Show them to the camera. What are they called, your books? Unless you got a whole book.
Well, I wonder if I have any of them. Where I've got some is in a box under the desk here. The first one was called The Rise and Fall of the Nephilim.
Wonderful.
And that came out about 10 years ago now. 2012, February 2012. And then I wrote a follow-up called The Secret History of the Reptilians, which was not my first choice. My publisher came and said, Nephilim's doing really well. What's your next book going to be for us? And I was like, wow, cool. And I gave him a bunch of topics. One was on witches in the Old Testament.
Oh, that would have been my favorite. That would have been, being a medium, that would have been me. I would have loved it. There it is. Yeah.
And did you know, by the way, that there's 7 different Hebrew words for the kind of witch? And when in all the witch trials, it was made famous, and we've heard this verse a million times.
We're digressing. Come on, advertise.
Sorry,
books. Let the
rabbit trail. So I wrote a book on the reptilians. Yeah, that's what they wanted me to write. And it started out as a look into the whole alien reptilian thing. And I got into that, and I tried to dissect that a little bit. But it was subtitled, let's see, it was called The Secret History of the Reptilians, something about the mythos of reptilian in our cultures.
Yeah.
And it got more into a book about, I started with Freud and Adler, the fathers of modern psychology, and talked about the 2 different approaches they took to why we believe the things we believe.
Yeah.
And the book really turned into a psychological book about why do we believe this? Is this a real thing? It's not something we can prove. We might come close to thinking we can prove it. We might have 1 million people that have testimony, but there's still no hard evidence to prove it. And I said, so what we prove, we believe that to be something. And so that's the way I approached the book. And so, by the way, I saw some of the, when people critique your book or review your book, and they put it up on Amazon or something like that. And I had a bunch of reviews on that one, and two of them back to back, different people. One of them said, I'm giving your book, if I could give it less than a 1, I would, because all you did was preach about the gospel of Jesus Christ and God. And I thought, wow, I don't remember doing that. The very next critique said, I can't give this less. I wish I could give it less than a 1. All you did was preach about there being aliens, and aliens are all that we have. And I thought, are these two guys reading the same book?
But it's a case of, it's each individual perception.
Right.
For me, it's each individual experience. Like just going back slightly to what you said about we can't prove. No, I have experiences. I've had a lifetime of contact. I can't prove that. I can paint it. I can't prove it. I've had a lifetime of information that I shouldn't know, and whether it's scientific, I can't prove it. I am the proof. However, I don't need to prove it. It's my truth. So, but people, it's the way people perceive things with their own belief system. So if you've got someone that is extremely dogmatic in a religion, they will, no matter what you write, they're not even seeing it, darling. They're just not seeing it. They're gonna, and then if you've got someone the other way, so I never worry, about anyone who critiques anything. I'm never here to offend, but I would never worry about it. It's just,
when this sparks this in my memory that back when the book on the Nephilim came out, I think in that first 2 or 3 months, I did like 70 interviews on radio and magazines and stuff like that. And one of them was Whitley Strieber, who wrote the book Communion.
Oh, that
many people might be familiar with that book.
Yeah, I know that book.
And as we were talking, and I stopped and I said, I don't remember the exact context within the conversation, but I said, Whitley, people will look at you and you know what you are? I said, you're a crackpot. And we paused. He kind of chuckled like, okay, where are you going with this? And I said, you're a crackpot. You know why? I said, because you had an experience, but you were the only one there. And you were the only one to experience that. So to everybody else who didn't experience that or is not an experiencer, you're a crackpot. You're full of shit. You're whatever it might be. I said, look at it this way too. I said, if you take it into the Bible, wasn't Moses the only guy at the burning bush?
I was going to say that.
Crackpot?
What about Jesus, this man, Jesus?
Yes.
He was the only one. And this has been part of what I did a recent podcast on Inception with a beautiful lady called Faye Vale. And we broke that down. We deconstructed it. What about him? Because I would say that to my peers. Okay, why is Jesus the only one?
Yeah.
And my major one was, it was about the virgin birth. And so, he must have been something, he's either schizophrenic or something like that, or there's more to what we're being told than what we're being told. Because I would say, you can't have a baby without sex. This was my mind back in the day. But I was aware of the Nephilim. I was aware of all of that. And I was saying, well, to me then, this guy Gabriel, maybe he wasn't one of them, but if he said you're with child and then there's my mind going, then that's a hybrid. Jesus is a hybrid. I mean, I never had.
Well, see, I have oft wondered if Jesus is one of the Elohim.
Yes.
Because you remember in the Old Testament, in the Garden of Eden story, or I'm sorry, just after that with the the flood story, where it says the sons of God came down and intermingled with the daughters of men and had children by them. Well, the sons of God in the Hebrew are known as the B'nai Ha-Elohim, the sons of God, and God Elohim. Now, there's 3,000 times in the Old Testament they use the word Elohim as the name of God in the Hebrew. Well, what does Elohim mean? Elohim is from the base word, and you know this. I'm preaching to the choir here a little bit.
No, you're not.
But for everybody listening, the name El is the Canaanite name for God. It was used in ancient Sumeria, 1,500 years before the time that Moses encoded Judaism. You had Elil and Enlil, the same name. Elil was the chief god of the Anunnaki. Now, you also had Enki, who was the brother god, but he was also known as, Enki was known as Ea, the word spelled Ea in English, Ea. But Ea, now you go forward 1,500 years into Canaanite culture, Elil becomes El, which is the base for God. El Elyon, El Shaddai, Elohim, all these names for God. Ea, Enki, Ea becomes the base word for Yahweh, which is Jehovah in the Latin. And so what you've got is these characters that are all part of, and I have to bring this up, it rabbit trails a little bit, but since I mentioned Moses at the burning bush and it ties into this, did you know that in the Old Testament story of Moses at the burning bush, that is actually, when you go back to the Hebrew, as far back as you can go, and people go, oh, you don't know how many times it's been. Well, you kind of know. You can go all the way back to the Septuagint, which is the Old Testament written in Greek form about 500 years before the time of Christ. You pick up a Bible today in the store, a King James, a New International Version, whatever version, flip open to your New Testament, or I'm sorry, your Old Testament, that's the Septuagint. That was recompiled after the Babylonian captivity. So going back to those manuscripts, you've got the Elohim, the name for God, being used. You've got the story of the burning bush. And in the burning bush, do you realize that the only place in the Old Testament where a Hittite, I'm sorry, not Hittite, a Mesopotamian wordplay is used is in the story of the burning bush, where God says, Moses says, whom should, and there's a whole story here, by the way. You know the whole notion of, if you know the deity's name, you have power over it. What did Moses ask God in the burning bush? He says, what's your name, so I can tell people who sent me? And God pretty much said, it's none of your goddamn business what my name is. You will tell them I am sent you. I am that I am they speak of. Now, in that phrase, that's a Mesopotamian wordplay that's much more ancient. If you think Moses, who was raised in the courts, the school of the nobles of Egypt, didn't study Mesopotamian religion, you'd be wrong. And so he wrote this out, and the wordplay in Mesopotamian is I am that Enki they speak of. The second I am was a wordplay for Enki. And I could take a half an hour and break it down.
We haven't got
you got to trust me on that.
No, this is because we got lots to get through. I remember when I was researching comparative religions and doing some research, and I was going way before even Islam come on. And I mean, going back, and I can't remember where I got it from, it's decades ago. And I was unaware at the time that there was another god that was a moon god, Allah. There was a god, and it was, I'm not saying it correctly, but it was a play of the words.
Right.
And with the moon god, the crest, and it was way before. And then what I'm trying to say is what I've learned, and you're an expert on this, I just researched it for personal, is I did notice the play on words and how they had moved or how they had changed. And from that, I come to my own conclusion I don't know if it's true or not, it's just what I know at the moment, is that all of these were the Elohim. I can't say anything other.
Well, you have God.
I mean, you had Michael, Raphael, you know, you can go on.
Yes. Yeah? Well, you've got this Elohim in the Old Testament. I rabbit trailed off on the burning bush there, but you get the Elohim in the Old Testament, and it talks about in Genesis 6:1 about the sons of God, the B'nai Ha-Elohim, and Elohim is the name of God.
Yeah.
One of the versions of the name of God. So it's B'nai Ha, the sons of the God. And that definition of Elohim is God among many gods.
Yes.
Or God of many gods.
Of many gods. Even in Islam, there's a plural, and I questioned it.
Yes.
And they said, "Oh no, that don't take. You know, except it says the gods." And then when Jesus, you know, when they were accusing him, and there's many statements, but like he's saying, "I was before Abraham," and then he'd say, "You say you're gods?" He said, "I've told you, you're all gods."
Yes.
You're all gods. And this pluralization has always been there. Always.
And the word used there is Elohim. Because Elohim, like the word Nephilim, im or him in the Hebrew is a suffix tacked on a word to denote plurality. So when you have El, the name for God, Elohim, it's a plurality. Yes. So it means God of many gods. And then now all you have to do is compare the passages about the Elohim, take it to Psalm 82. Psalm 82. Okay. And in Psalm 82, you've got God is kind of kicking butt on what people think are angels.
Yeah.
It's called the divine council.
Yeah.
And he's up there and he says, and it says at the very beginning, in English, it says, and God said to them, you are all gods, the bright shining princes of heaven, and so on. And people think it's angels. Well, the word for angel is malach or malosh, or melohim, Arabic, for plurality.
Yeah.
So it's not angels. You can push that out of your mind.
Yeah.
It's Elohim. So there, and it says, and Elohim stood in the midst of the Elohim, and he, singular, said to them, plural, you are all Elohim, the bright shining princes of heaven.
Yes.
And then you go back to the Garden of Eden story.
Yeah.
We were taught that was Satan, Lucifer at the Garden of Eden. Yeah. Those names are never used. Devil isn't even used in the passage.
No, it's not.
The serpent is called.
Addition. Can I ask you on that before you go into it?
Yeah.
I mean, I used to question, what my little bit of understanding of that, the Garden of Eden, and I would say, why would a loving God, this omnipresent, omnipotent, omni, one, deny knowledge to his creation? I breathe life into you, like I'm a hybrid. Hello, I'm not human. Thank you. But why would that happen? Yeah. Okay. One. And loved me 1 minute, but because I wanted some knowledge, hated me. And the second part to that, I'm digress, guys, because it's so interesting. I need this information. And I heard you speak on it on Laura's show and Teresa, but it's always been my question. And I would ask my peers, right, Cain and Abel, okay, one is killed, then there's one, Adam, Eve. How did they have families? Who did they have sex with?
That's it.
Discernment. Who did they have sex with? Now, I remember asking an Islamic scholar who was wonderful, God bless him, lovely, and he just said to me, not many people ask such questions. However, there were others on the earth at that
obvious
time. That come from Islam, not Christianity. Because I said, how can this happen when there's no one to have sex with, to procreate? There must have been more beings. So that was so I'm throwing it back at you. I know I've digressed.
Well, there's an interesting thing about that. is that, in the Fundamentalist Baptist Church, we were taught in theology that Adam and Eve had children, and then Cain and Abel, Abel's offed by Cain. So how did we populate? Well, obviously, we were told, Adam and Eve had other children, and this could be centuries after the birth of Cain and Abel when this happened. I said, so it took centuries for them to figure out one guy's sacrifice was appropriate to God and the other guy's wasn't. It took centuries for them to figure that out. I said, so, and I said, on top of that, remember, after Abel's death, it says, and Adam went in and knew his wife Eve, and she bore him a third child. And she named him Seth, because, and she says, it's almost bittersweet. She says, the Lord has given me a child to replace my lost son, Abel. And then it says, what does Cain do? Cain, you got all these conversations recorded that God has with Cain. Before Cain kills Abel, God comes down. Cain, I know what you're thinking. The lion is lying at the gate to devour you. Do not give in to this sin, and don't touch your brother, in essence, what he's telling him. Well, Cain ends up killing his brother. What happens next? God comes down, meets with Cain. He goes, Cain, where's your brother? And the famous question and answer there was, well, am I my brother's keeper? And God says, don't be coy with me, or as I tell my own children, don't quibble with me. God said, the blood of your brother cries out from the ground, and but I'm not going to slay you. Now, the first interesting thing that I noticed in these exchanges was, here's God going to Cain, warning Cain not to give in to sin. Then after the murder, going to Cain, talking to him about his sin and what's going to happen. I never see a recorded story of God going, hey, Abel, watch out for your brother Cain. He's going to kill you. Exactly. I never saw that.
And no, that is a valid, a crucial point to. Not many people would notice that. But yes, he didn't get a conversation with God at all. But however, I would ask back then, who's this God talking? Who's this being? God is omnipotent. You can't see him. You can't touch him. How? And I was questioning, who is it? So in later years, I'm saying it's got to be some dimensional being. There's got to be a being there.
There had to have been a physical being, a physical
There had to be to have a conversation.
Remember in the garden, right after the fall, right after Adam and Eve eat the fruit. It says, and God went down to the garden to walk in the cool of the day. And God calls out, Adam.
Walk, if according to the Abrahamic, he can't walk. He doesn't. Yeah, that was me back in the day. I'm sorry, getting excited because it's the most illogical statements, and I found like a cohort who actually resonates and is helping me to sort of say, Gloria, you're not crazy. I saw these discrepancies, and I kept questioning and questioning. And all I was ever told is you're going to burn in hellfire for that one.
Yep. And there's another thing that you brought up about the knowledge, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. I asked one question. I wrote this into the book when I was talking about this, is that you've got Adam and Eve in the garden. They're given everything, but they're given one command, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, thou shalt not eat. And the first question that came to my mind was one that you already asked. What did God have against his creation having knowledge or gaining knowledge? If this is supposed to give you knowledge, what does it say when Eve looked at the fruit that the serpent said, hey, you're not going to literally die? He says, look at the fruit. And it says, she looked at it and it looked good to eat. And it looked, what was the exact wording? She looked at the fruit and saw it looked good and would give her wisdom. And it's like, how do you look at an apple or whatever for a banana and go, that looks really good? And
that's going to give me wisdom.
Give me wisdom.
No, I don't think so.
So she eats the fruit and she gives it to Adam, who Adam is like, yeah, sure. I maintain that this was a sexual thing. This had nothing to do with eating of literal fruit. All the verbs in the Hebrew there, all of the phrases between all the exchanges between the serpent and Eve and Adam and so on. And I don't mean this to be flippant or to sound bad, but what you're looking at there is it was a three-way that happened in the garden. The serpent character was not the devil, not Lucifer. We're not told that till 1,000 years later.
Yes,
they say that old serpent, the devil.
Yeah.
That was 1,000 years afterwards.
Yeah.
But it says that the serpent, who is called in the Hebrew in Genesis, he's called Nakash. And Nakash means illuminator.
Yes, the light
bringer
bearer,
of knowledge.
The light bearer. I remember.
Bright, shining one.
Yes.
Go back to Psalm 82.
Yeah.
And Elohim stood in the midst of Elohim.
Yeah.
And he said, you are all Elohim, the bright, shining princes of heaven. Who is the serpent? Nakash, the bright, shining one.
I agree with you. And that's what I found out. So if we just pump the brakes there.
Sure.
And the reason this conversation, I'm enjoying it and I'm opening it up, is because if you have an understanding of this, it will shift your reality to a totally different timeline. And for me, that shift, I'm obviously, we're all hybrids, we're all part of the Elohim. Come on, it's obvious. There's no such thing as there's never been a human being per se. If you want to take it from the religious scriptures, with the clay, the mud, and the life force spirit come from the God. That is not a human being. That's a creation, a hybrid between the elements. Go back to the Sumerians, you can go anywhere you want. Native Americans, go all the way back. The gods were there, and they were, when I say Elohim, I just say the creator gods. I call them the creator gods. Yeah, that's
there you go.
For me, this conversation, and there's many having this conversation now, and I did one podcast already just on the Jesus part and Mary and Moses. It's a conversation that's needed in these times, because once you open the door to this, the fears, the beliefs, the concepts, the limitation that you have, this finite limited being, it just blows the top off.
It does. Now, you mentioned something here. There's a phrase you used about the thing that can change you, the thing that moved you. Give me a couple of minutes to set this case up, but I think it's awfully simple. When you look at the Cain and Abel story, which came after Adam and Eve in the garden. They fall. What happens? God tells you've fallen, you're this and that and blah, blah, blah. But he says to Eve and to the serpent, he says, there shall be constant enmity or division between the seed of the serpent and the seed of the woman. And he says, and most scholars will tell you this. Jewish scholars will tell you this, rabbinic scholars, Christian scholars will tell you the first prophecy in the Old Testament of a coming Messiah was in the Garden of Eden, when God said to the serpent, and there will be a day when you will bite his heel, but he will crush your head. That's a prophecy of the coming Messiah. Now, no matter what theology you want to put on messianic stuff, here's what I found in looking at the whole story of the Messiah and the coming Messiah was one that piggybacked on it the story of Race Interrupted. And this is how it comes down. You've got the serpent character, Nakash. He's an Elohim. By definition, if you take it back to Psalm 82 to cross-reference, he's an Elohim. Whoever he actually is, he's an Elohim. He is the one that I believe had sex with Eve. Then Eve had sex with Adam. Look at this cool thing the serpent showed me. And I don't think he was a literal serpent. I think he was in man form. He's just referred to metaphorically. So she has sex with two guys. What happens? She bears 2 sons.
Twins.
Now, in the Bible, it doesn't refer to them as twins, but you look at every creation, first family through every culture.
2.
And the first families always had twins, triplets, quadruplets, quintuplets.
Yeah.
There was always multiples.
Yeah.
Now, what happens when, so here's what I think happened. Cain is the offspring of Nakash and Eve, while Abel was the offspring of Adam and Eve. Because what happens next? Well, he murders Abel. God favors Cain. Why does God, now this is speculative, but why does God favor Cain? He's one of the Elohim. He's a mixture. He's you could call him the first Nephilim. He was the first of the mixed blood. What is the definition of Messiah? What is the other term used for Messiah in the Old Testament? The kinsman redeemer. That was the term. The kinsman redeemer. It had to be a redeemer that would come and be one of us to purify us, to take away the sin, to atone for sin, to be the redemption for sin. This is the Jewish concept and understanding of Messiah, kinsman redeemer, one who must be one of us. And what do you have all through the Old Testament now? The one who must be one of us redeemer is coming. Why do you think there are 13 chapters in the book of Numbers in the Old Testament and so much reference to the genealogical record?
Oh, God, yes.
And Adam begat so-and-so, and so-and-so begat all the way up to Abraham. Why do they have to establish that record? To show that the Messiah, the kinsman redeemer, came from a certain bloodline. But it was the bloodline that was not tainted by the blood of the Elohim, the mixture of celestial and human. Now, the reason Cain, what happened with Cain? All these genealogies always show, and so begat so-and-so, and they always go to the firstborn son, the firstborn son, the firstborn son. Cain's still alive. Why didn't the genealogies go to Cain and his descendants? Because Cain was not of pure human blood. Cain was of blood of Elohim and human. So they had to go through, they don't mention Abel anymore in the genealogies. Who do they go to? Not the firstborn Cain, the thirdborn Seth. Why? Because Seth is the firstborn of Adam and Eve of pure human blood from mom and dad.
Yeah, through procreation between 2 physical beings, not a dimensional being and a Homo sapien, what we call Homo sapien being. That's really, really interesting and a lot to get your head round. But again, that shifts. And if you can be open-minded, think, wow, I mean, to me, anything at this moment, to me, I would say it's my truth could change at any time, but every being on this earth is part of the Elohim, is the Elohim of the Elohim. And it's so spread out now, it's unbelievable. And the fact that for me, that makes it more exciting to experience life from a different perception, because when you that in itself gives you, we don't have the infinite consciousness as yet, but it breaks open the limited, stagnated, low frequency conscious being thinking you're just this. It opens you up and to explore, well, I'm more than that. And what harm does it to find out? Call them angels, call them Elohim. I call them angels and Elohim. I really don't know what the name is.
I think they're 2 different beings. So, but angels were created beings to be the messengers and the servants of God, biblically speaking. But and Elohim were part of the caste of the gods, like the Olympians.
Like the Greek gods. However, you saying that, not that I mean, I find it interesting. I'm just listening. I want to unpack that a bit. In the scripture, they said it was Gabriel who came to Mary. And they called him an archangel Gabriel, and she got pregnant by Gabriel. Okay? But that was an angel. It didn't say it was, unless, I don't know, I don't read Hebrew and old scripture. Did it say Gabriel, an angel, or what?
Well, it said that Gabriel, it doesn't call him an angel, but he's called an archangel in which is a step up from the angels, higher category of angels. But it also said that Gabriel was announcing that the child within you is from God the Father. He didn't say from me.
No.
He was there to announce the pregnancy.
So which God was that? The Elohim?
That would be Elohim, the main Elohim.
The main Elohim.
This would be Elohim, not Jehovah. And by the way, Elohim and Jehovah are two distinct, different beings.
Well, I think they're two distinct. They're very distinctive, actually, between the Old Testament and the New Testament. I mean, I can't believe it. The contrast is like, I've got two. Which one is it? I certainly don't like the Old Testament one. I mean, really, that was.
I would always figure that if God is indeed the creator of the universe, or the originator, if you will, that did he have the ability to impregnate a woman? Sure, he did. So I don't have as much problem with that. However, when you start,
but I like what it does when you deconstruct and have this beautiful conversation. It can take away a lot of the beliefs, systems, the dogma that we have all attained. We didn't look. We were born. Wherever we're born, we could be born in Saudi Arabia. We're born a Muslim with belief systems. UK, you're born a Christian back in the day, not now, because it's not really a Christian country anymore. But do you know what I'm trying to say? Yeah, you're born in, Israel. You're born into a Jewish faith. Your parents, society, schools give you a religion, and they give you your beliefs. So by having these conversations is not to offend anyone anywhere in the world, but the fact it opens up. In fact, I think the dogma now has pushed so many people away from, you can call it consciousness, divine consciousness, Christ consciousness, because of the dogma. But through this and the deconstructing and talking about Moses and Jesus and things like that, people are coming back in, but not into the dogma. They're coming back into the source. They're becoming aware. People are experiencing energies of the Elohim.
It's because you can blow holes all through dogma.
Yes.
Dogma is a choice. Yeah. It's a faith. Yeah. It's a faith. Yeah. And it's built usually on not having all the complete information, but the information that establishes what you want people to know.
Just don't dig too deep on it. Just don't ask questions.
Right. Yeah.
But so to finish the podcast, I would love for you to, and it's just been, we digress, but it's been fantastic. We'll have to do another one. That's sure. We're going to do another one. We'll just take it somewhere else. I would like you to, the Elohim, just to really give us a bigger picture of who they are from your truth. The Elohim and from the Nephilim. So in the difference or inference, so we got Elohim and Nephilim, just to bring some clarity.
Sure. The Elohim, as I understand them, they were also known as the Watchers.
Yeah.
In the Old Testament, the Elohim were the sons of Elohim, the part of the pantheon of gods.
Yeah.
And Elohim, God, was just the chief of them, like Zeus.
Yeah.
So this is the Elohim. It says they came down and impregnated women. And by the way, it was not an evil act, but it was evil in the sight of Elohim, the God, the chief God, because he didn't want them to do this.
Yeah.
They chose to do it anyway.
Yeah.
They came down and they impregnated women. And it says, and they took whomever they chose. And in the linguistics says, and they loved those that they chose. This was an act of, they loved these women.
Yeah, they loved them. Yeah.
And they came down and intermingled with them. Get away from the notion, or not the notion, the idea that there was no female Elohim that came down. So that's a totally different topic.
I'm with you, yeah.
But the Elohim are the watchers. They came down. They did this. The Nephilim are said to be the offspring that came of the mingling of the women with the Elohim, except, and I used to believe that, except you see, when you read the account in Genesis, it says, and the Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also afterward.
Yes.
And remember, you've also got in the Hebrew culture, the Gibborim, who were the more giant. They were like the gods that were protectors of Israel, or pre-Israel, of God's people.
Yeah.
They were protectors, but they were also, they could be very vicious and evil, almost like jinn.
Yeah.
And so you've got these characters. Now, the Nephilim, I'm not so convinced that they were the offspring, because in the book of Enoch now, when he talks about this same scenario, these 200, he calls them prefects from heaven, came down, landed on the slopes of Mount Armon, which is Mount Hermon in northern Israel today, and they decided to go into the villagers and intermingle with the women. And it tells what they brought, what they taught them. They taught them agriculture, cosmology, and how to do everything. So you've got this going on. The Nephilim are not mentioned as the offspring, but Enoch says this about the Nephilim. He says, when the flood came, the flood was not sent to destroy the wickedness of man. It was sent to destroy the wickedness brought to mankind. Noah was the only righteous man, the Bible tells us. We always thought, oh, that means that he didn't sin a lot. No, what it meant was, it says he was the only righteous man, pure in all his generations.
So he wasn't.
People don't know what that means.
He wasn't the original, one of the hybrids.
He wasn't a Nephilim, is all that means. He wasn't an Elohim. He was pure human bloodline. And that's why God chose him and destroyed the others. And this is a common story scenario, by the way, through all different cultures, that some kind of heavenly beings, celestial beings came down, impregnated women, spread around the earth, and the God or the superior power waged some kind of war or some kind of catastrophe on the earth to wipe out this race. And so what happened in the book of Enoch? It says the Nephilim, who were all destroyed in the great flood, but their spirits remained on the earth. And these are and I'm grossly paraphrasing, these are the spirits that you encounter as demons and evil spirits, things like that. You get into like paranormal stuff and ghost hunting. People who encounter these beings.
In Islam, and because I was surprised in Islam that they have a belief system, and they speak of it all the time, the jinn. And I studied that. There's two types. There's the good, what you call the good, and there's the evil, either way. But however, one thing I mean, being a medium, that does help a lot. But then also from there is they can't touch you. If you believe they can touch you, just like anything else, you get it. So,
but I believe they're still very dangerous. Another conversation we'll have to have sometime is on the jinn. And
I studied them, and I must admit, this is a God's trick. I dreamed and I saw one, and it was one way back, and it was of no harm to me. And I would hear all these stories, and and this was a control factor that was coming out, fear-based. But basically, the more that I went into it, there's no difference between these spirits. They could be your Nephilim. I have no idea. I don't know. But what I'm saying is there's a good and the bad, the ones that help. You look at Solomon, he brought them in to build. And there's the polarity there, like there's a polarity in the Homo sapiens sapien, the good, the bad, the ugly, the good ones, the bad ones. And you need that, you need the polarity, you need the opposites for creation, to unfold. So another time we can talk about them. And I remember, I was given all these stories, and I said, no, it's your perception. You either fear, if that's your belief system, you'll experience it. That's the way I look at things anyway. But so we'll do that another time. but thank you. I mean, you really gave a description there. I've got one more question though. So tell me, okay. So we got the Elohim, yeah, I call them the creator gods. We got the Nephilim. I've always thought they were what they called the ones that mated with humans. I've always thought that. Doesn't really bother me in the slightest at all.
Yeah, me either.
Who were from the Sumerian tablets, Enki and what were they? Were they Elohim or Nephilim, or who were they?
Well, I think the word Elohim comes from the name Elil and Enlil. And as I mentioned, Jehovah comes from Iyah, which is Enki.
Yeah, so you think
I believe all these beings, that there is we used to talk and say, what was the proto-religion? Because Moses, when he wrote about all this stuff in the Pentateuch, in the Bible, he penned this stuff around 1400 BCE.
Yeah.
So in 1400 BC, you're going back another 1500 years to Sumerian culture.
Yeah.
He was very schooled in comparative religions. He got a pharaonic education.
Yeah.
So he wrote about these beings. They predate the words Nephilim.
Yeah.
But I believe they're the same beings. You're talking about the same characters. Because the whole Garden of Eden story with Elohim and eventually Jehovah, the whole Garden of Eden story is a rewriting.
It's in the Sumerian writing.
It's a rewriting of the creation of mankind with Enki.
Yes, exactly, because that's why I raised that. Because I noticed what's in the Bible was written thousands of years before, and it's been with new names. There was another man that wasn't called Moses. There was another one that wasn't called Noah with a flood. So many bloody pre-floods going on.
I know.
But that's why I asked it. So what we could say, it really then, it reminds me, and I think it's the Vedic or whatever, the India.
The Vedic, yeah.
Yeah. And I remember studying that briefly because it was just, and of the gods and the warring of the gods. I know I'm digressing, but this is too fascinating. My show, I can go into overtime.
That you can do whatever the hell you want.
Yeah. And I remember the story, and because they were talking about extraterrestrial beings, there were gods they were sort of showing they've always been here. And I was wondering, I wonder if they were the Nephilim and the Elohim. Maybe it's all about them and it's nothing to do with us.
It could be the very same thing. Remember, the great flood that science will tell us, geology will tell us existed, happened about 8,000 years ago. Mm-hmm. And then there was another one about 6,000 years ago, as global as you can possibly make it of the known world at that time. Now, they don't put any spiritual connotation to it in science and geology. They just say this existed. Now, you've got places like Göbekli Tepe.
Oh, God, yes.
That dates back 12,000 years.
Yes, or maybe more now, they're saying.
Maybe more now. They're finding civilizations that date back twice as old as that.
Yes.
So we're looking at what is the true religion? Who's got it right? I think we're all the religions we're exposed to are all teaching different or variations of the same thing. Yeah. And I'll say this about Moses did exactly what Muhammad did.
Yes.
Several centuries later. What did Muhammad do? He went to Mecca, where they had something like 192 different gods that they worshiped.
Yes, they did. Yes,
and he had a Jewish man and a Christian man that were his mentors.
Yes, he did.
And he was an aristocrat. He was trying to unify the clans, the Arabic clans. And they said, if you want to unify your people, you have to go monotheistic. So what did Muhammad do? He eliminated 191 gods and elevated one god. I think his name was Hamal. He elevated him and renamed him Allah.
Yes.
And said, this shall be our one God. Yeah. Now, Moses did the same thing.
So did Akhenaten.
Yes.
So did Akhenaten did the same thing. They had the multiple gods. He got rid of them and he brought in the one God. and they got rid of him and defaced all his. I paint Akhenaten.
Yes.
It's the same story again and again and again.
It is. It's too bad Akhenatens didn't last. It lasted a generation. Boom. The priests came in. They were pissed off that he did this and that they moved the capital, halfway up the Nile. And they came in and they took it all down.
So really,
after his death.
In a nutshell, I mean, I don't know. I could be talking a load of bullshit, actually. But however, this is discernment. This is breaking down. For me, I'm thinking it was never about, the individual, like when the dogma's telling you, you're sinned, you're this. It was never about us. It's never been, that's an ego thing, It's about the gods. We are the gods. They are the gods. Different types of gods. Some are Nephilim, some are Elohim, but it's the play of form, the play of creation.
Yes.
We'll never know the true answer at the moment because we're still having the human experience. But that makes it bloody exciting.
Doesn't it, though?
Doesn't it just make life, oh my God. It's, you go, it's not what I thought. I mean, I'm already in that space. I'm already in, I'm already there. But however, for me, the excitement, it's been part of my journey to have an awareness of this. And you really don't need to be a PhD. You don't need to have anything. It's a thing called.
I will tell you this, and I wrote about this in my first book. I said, why do people might ask where I think I have the right to talk about any of this stuff at all? Because technically, all I possess is a high school diploma. I went to 2.5 years of Bible college. I almost got expelled for being a naughty boy, and I withdrew. A lovely rascal. And then our church started a small seminary. And so they recruited me to come and be a student. We'll tutor you in the balance of your bachelor's degree while you work on your master's. So I was doing master's work and bachelor's work at once, and then I withdrew from that. I went totally into advertising.
Don't need it.
So basically what you've got in me is a guy who's had 5 years of post-high school education, but no degree. I've only got a high school degree.
Listen, to me, in my eyes, no one needs a degree. That is a false,
everything else that I've learned in the 30, what would it be? 1982 was my last year in seminary. Almost the 39 years since I was in seminary had everything I know now. Very little of it went to, well, I take that back. A lot goes back to my old theological training.
The fact is, each one of this, and all
I've spent 40 years studying since then. Let's put it that way.
Each longer than a 3-year degree. I'm telling you. Each guest that comes on the show, and myself with my past as well, it's an experiential journey, and we're just sharing our truth. If our truth resonates with you, that's wonderful. If it doesn't, put it to one side. You've got two beings will have the same truth. No, there is no right, there is no wrong. What the most important thing is, you don't stagnate, and that you're open-minded. That's why the show's called Open Mind, to have an organic conversation and listen to someone else's truth. Don't judge them, because you're never going to prove your truth, and you're never going to disprove another truth, because it's a personal experience.
Right.
And all truths change. I don't hold the same truths I did a year ago, even a month ago, I'm sure. As we expand, and the trick I've always finding, believe it or not, I chat for bloody England, but it's listening to another, listening to what they're saying, asking the question, wow, that's interesting, and just keep it there, don't judge it. Life can be good. I got to close the show now, because we're going to do
all right.
It's just, we're going to do this again. We're going to do it again.
Let's.
I want to thank you for coming on to the show. And I'm going to title it The Nephilim and the Elohim. That's what I'm going to call it. That'll get the eyes going. And thank you so much indeed.
Well, we jumped all over the place, but thank you for having me on.
No, but it's really interesting. We covered a lot. Well, we covered a tiny percentage where we wanted to go. I never got to the bit about Moses. He killed a man, and I wanted to get on that bit. But we're not. I'm going to stop. Right.
I'll just put it this way. One of the political factions. There was political factionalizing.
Right.
That guy right there, that's who I believe Moses is right there. That was Senenmut.
Yes, I hear you.
He was the Grand Vizier to Hatshepsut.
We're going to
Boom.
digress. We'll go back and we'll do another one, and we're bringing Egypt, and we're bringing Akhenaten, and we're bringing Moses, who killed, and we'll do another one, and we'll just go off somewhere else.
That sounds good. Anytime.
We could talk for hours. Thank you so much indeed. And thank you. I hope you're as excited as I am. As you know what I'm like, I always get excited. Thank you very much for watching Open Minds. Please like and share. It's not about me. It doesn't feed my ego. But my guests, the information they give freely, it can go far and wide and maybe help somebody. And as I said, I've started, it's on my Facebook page and Open Minds page. It's called Buy Me a Coffee, Ko-fi, and to donate if you can, just to help me along, because I'm now getting snowed under. The shows are coming out 3 times a week on this one and twice on the other one. And it's just, and then there's only me doing all of this. So if you can buy me a coffee or a few, please donate. And thank you so much. You were amazing. Until the next time, everybody, it's bye from me. Bye.